Hi, I'm Linda Lambert. I am a member of Red Wheelbarrow Writers, and we're having these informative conversations with people who contributed to this book, Spring and All, newly released from Red Wheelbarrow Writers, published by Sidekick Press. I think this is the best of the 4 anthologies that we've done, and we are talking today with Amanda Stubbert, and I loved her piece. So she's going to read that piece at the end of our interview, in case you missed the launch at Village Books. But here's her bio. Amanda Stubbert fuels her passion for storytelling with degrees in psychology and theater, and pulls stories from others as a writing coach, editor, producer, and book launch specialist. She is currently developing a tragically funny coming of age story in the 80s memoir about finding balance between absentee men and unrealistic expectations. I can't imagine how you treat that, but what was the impetus for doing that memoir?
Yeah. Well, it was my life. And I feel like I'm still unpacking. So just to give you a little snapshot of my life at the beginning, my parents got divorced when I was 4. My mom was my dad's second wife. So we were family number 2. So I have a brother and sister, just barely too young, could have been the parents of my sister and I. My mom's kids, my dad's second family. And then my sister and I are only 15 months apart. So they were a pair and we were a pair. But due to my dad's alcoholism, my parents split when I was very young. So I grew up in a 3-woman household with my mom and my sister and I, 3 women against the world. And really her community, what she used to get us through the day when we didn't have money or when we didn't have help in whatever way, was the church. We were in church at least 3 times a week, if not 4 or 5 or more. Every activity there was to do church related, we were doing it. And that had nothing to do with my father. My father was a brilliant trial attorney, very much an intellectual, a musician, a reader, literature. My mom was a school teacher, but she was raised by 2 school teachers in a small town. So she wasn't dumb, but she just had a very different outlook on life. She was very intelligent, but she hadn't had the same sort of resources that my dad grew up with. So basically, picture this young girl whose whole world is women, and she gets these tiny little snippets of time with men, but she spends so much of her life being told, you're not okay without a man. You aren't complete without a man. You can't really do anything you're supposed to do unless you have a father, a pastor, a husband helping you or guiding you or showing you what to do. And even though I was born with a very, very logical outlook on life, being like childlike was not really an option, because from 4, my parents split when we were 4. By the time I was 5, my sister and I at 5 and 6 were taking the train from Portland to Seattle by ourselves to go visit our dad, who would then be drunk most of the time. So there was very little like childlike, oh, let's just go play. I mean, we were creative children, but you grew up real fast because you had to. And so with this logical bent on the world, I just remember sitting there day after day, week after week at church going, but that doesn't make sense. But I don't understand. But how's that supposed to work? Like, I believe you when you tell me this is how it works, but how do I walk that out? I have no idea. And so it took me so much of my life to kind of make all that work. And as you can imagine, when you get to junior high and high school and start dating, I wasn't interested in nice boys that were there every day because that didn't make sense to me. I fell in love with a boy who would show up and he was all in and life was magical, and then he'd just disappear for a month. And we dated on and off for almost 8 years. And then, yeah, and I won't give away the end of the book, but there's this pretty startling moment where suddenly she has no men in her life at all, and she has to decide what are you going to do about that? So
I really want to find out about what that she did and how you reconciled all of that. And I don't blame you for not giving it away, but I'm very curious. My curiosity is piqued. So is that book out there yet?
it is not. Hopefully it's on its way. Yeah, I hope about a year from now you'll be able to find that book. So because there was so much popular culture, being a latchkey kid, single parent family in the 80s, there's a lot of pop culture in there.
Good.
My dad, my brother and sister are all huge Beatles fans. So there's a lot of references in there that I hope people will pick up and understand and enjoy. So I think it's great. Obviously, I'm very excited about it because what I sort of hoped people would say is, I'm laughing out loud, and yet I'm thinking that's actually horrible. And I'm like, that's right. That's my life. The dark humor is what got my siblings and I through the day. And that's definitely clear in the story. So if that's what you like in a book, I think you'll like that book too.
That's what I like in a book. I love dark humor. And I was looking at your Facebook posts, and you had taken a picture of a guy in a truck, and his truck bed was totally full of scooters. And you commented, "A guy in front of me hits a speed bump. It's scooters for everyone." Well, that girl has a great sense of humor.
Thank you.
And so with your background in, let's see, psych and theater, how has that integrated into your storytelling or influenced your background?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like I said, my father's an attorney. My sister is an attorney. There were lots of attorneys and judges when you go back through the family. And I was never going to do that. I actually wanted to be Perry Mason when I was younger, but my dad on an offhanded conversation once said, "Oh, but it's not like that anymore. It's 80% paperwork. You wouldn't like it." And in that one tiny comment, I went, okay. And then never again thought I would go into law. But I loved theater and I loved psychology. And so when I ended up in school with a double major of theater and psychology, I cannot tell you how many times someone said to me, "Oh, you're going to law school."
Really?
No, like, because pre-law isn't always a thing. And you don't have to be pre-law to go to law school.
Sure.
And so if you're going to be a litigator, both theater and psychology are tools that you want to have in your quiver. So it's sort of funny that I would do that, but then not go into law. So at the time, I thought of them as two totally disparate things. I thought I would be a counselor and then I would act on the weekends, and then that would be my life. And neither of those things happened. I ended up being an actor for the first chunk of my life. When you don't have a mortgage to pay or kids at home, it's a lot easier to be an actor. So I did that for quite a while. I did late night comedy improv for about 7 years,
Oh,
which even professional actors can be pretty scared of that. But I like to preach that everyone everywhere on the planet should take an improv class because life is improv. And the more comfortable you can be in an uncomfortable moment, the easier your life is going to be. And so to this day, I say, if you want to do something to change your life, go take an improv class. It'll teach you how to think on your feet, stand up for yourself, and be comfortable in your own skin. It's a big deal.
that's kind of scary for us introverts,
I do know. For sure. And then psychology, to me, they're so complementary because, especially like brain science, I just cannot get enough. I'm a junkie. If you know Jean-Claude Vedongton and Hidden Brain on
Yes,
NPR,
I love that.
I love him. Huge fan. And I love to know how our brain works. And isn't theater and psychology the same thing? You're trying to figure out why we do the things we do, and then trying to figure out how do we manipulate that to make the world a better place.
I think you just said something profound. Aren't theater and psychology the same thing? I have never thought about that.
Well, and see, again, with me, my logical brain as a kid, both things they're just coming at it for a different purpose, but they're really trying to dig super deep and say, why do we do the things that we do? and what are the results of the things that we do. And then, of course, that next step of, if I tweak that, can I make change? And that is everything. I mean, you'll ask any actor, even if it's on the screen, so you're only doing little snippets of scenes at a time. When the director says cut, let's go one more time, you always want to try and pull out something totally new, because if I say my line differently, if I come at it in anger instead of just acceptance, then you're going to respond differently. And sometimes we're going to get something we never even thought of until that moment. And isn't psychology the same way? You go to your therapist and you say, have you thought about like just getting mad, not swallowing it? Have you thought about just bringing your anger to the table and seeing what happens? It's kind of the same thing. And then, of course, the penultimate of acting is showing the world something and having people say, that touched me, like that changed how I thought about something or how I felt about something. So yeah, to me, they just run like absolute parallel train tracks.
I saw that change happen in your essay with respect to the little boy, Alexis, after whom you named your piece. When people listen to it, they'll know the moment. But can you tell me what kind of a switch happened within you when you were with him that might not be in the story?
Sure. So I was on a writer's trip to Oaxaca, Mexico, which is both a state and a city. We were in the city of Oaxaca inside the state of Oaxaca. And our tour guide took us way out from the city where we were staying to visit a textile factory. It is not the way Western Americans think of a factory. It was, some cinder block brick buildings, a courtyard. It was basically a family compound, if you will, not a factory the way we think about it. And like many families in Oaxaca, they were still using traditional methods that went way back to early Spanish colonial times. And this family was known personally to our tour guide. So that's why he took us a lot farther away than we needed to go to see some of these traditional methods. And I was tired. I was hot. It was a little bit of a bumpy ride. There was a bunch of us and a professor from Western Washington University and I were in the back seats because we were both pretty short. And oh my gosh, by the time we got there, we thought if it was 10 more minutes, we were going to need to like get out because we were so car sick. But then when we walked in, it was like a museum is a bad analogy because you're separated, right? There's snapshots in time in a museum behind glass. And we are literally entering a family's home, a family that lives very differently than we do. And they still have a cell phone. They're wearing Levi's. It's not like, we can understand each other, but they have chosen to live a very different life. They've chosen to live in a way that's married to the land and respects history in a way that I think as Americans, we can't even really relate to. So immediately my attitude changed and I was like, I'm so glad I'm here. And so we went through the day and the different demonstrations and we saw things and I was absolutely fascinated, way more than I thought I would be. But more than the techniques and the traditions, I was just so fascinated by the family. I think he said there was something like 39 extended family members that are somehow in the process between tending the sheep to selling the final goods. And so to have us even be able to meet 3 generations of that family just in our time there, Daniel doing some of the demonstrations, his mom, the abuela of the family, was cooking us food for our lunch. And then their son, Alexis, who was just helping out. He's this little boy and he brought out our tray of hot chocolate and he was so cute. And instead of, I think a lot of tourist towns in America, the kids are just sort of annoyed by the tourists. Why wouldn't you be? I think even the shopkeepers are kind of annoyed by the tourists. Yeah. But he was interested. We were interested in him and he was interested in us. And even though we had a double language barrier because a member of our group tried to speak to Alexis, the 6 or 7-year-old boy, speak to him in Spanish. And then our tour guide said, "Oh, he doesn't speak Spanish." And we're thinking, what? And he's like, "No, he still speaks Zapotec, which is the pre-Spanish language. And his dad had to translate. So if I wanted to speak to Alexis, I talked to Alberto, our guide, who spoke in Spanish to Daniel, his dad, who spoke in Zapotec to Alexis. And then we went back around. And to be able, I'm pretty good with kids. I love kids. It's just in my DNA. And the fact that Alexis and I had an entire conversation and connected in a way that I'll never forget him, even though we had to have 2 adults to have any sort of actual language communication. I thought, this is what the world needs. They just needs people to just sit down and be interested in each other.
I'm wondering if your piece will be translated so that he can read it.
Well, I had hoped to ask another author who I know from other things, another contributor to the anthology. His name is Sean Dwyer, and he is a Spanish language professor.
Yes.
And so he heard, I thought after we do our readings and we all, go to our little happy hour afterwards, I'll ask him if he would mind. And I didn't even get a chance to ask. Sean came running up to me and said, "Will you let me translate that so you can send it back to the family?" And I was like, yes.
That is vintage Sean.
It is. It is. And I need to give him credit for not just saying he would do it, but by the time I sat back down, he had already decided he was going to translate it so we could send it back to the family.
He is amazing. He knows many languages, and
yes,
he will do a great job for you. So I'm so happy to know that, because as I was reading it and I thought, how is anybody going to translate things like veil of thick eyelashes and ping pong paddle cactus leaf? Are they going to get it? But I was so, when people hear your story, I hope they'll pay a lot of attention to the ending, because I think that ending just burns into your soul. It's really a beautiful ending.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'll tell you a little funny story about that. So, again, it's probably hard until I read it, but when I walked away that day, I knew I was going to write a piece about our day, but I didn't know what I was going to write about. And that night, some of us went to this little local place to get massages because we'd been walking around all day. I'm like, oh, we'll get a massage. So I'm laying there getting massage. So my head's like down in the hole.
Right.
And the end of the story just came to me. That happens sometimes where I see the end and then I write backwards. And I'm laying there in the hole while I'm getting the massage and tears are just running out of my eyes onto the floor. And I thought, I don't know what this poor woman thinks is happening right now. Yeah.
She thinks that she is pummeling you with a little too much energy.
I know. I actually thought, should I tell her that I'm not upset in any way? I just let it go. She didn't ask.
She may not have even noticed. She was so busy making you feel better
Right.
on the rest of your body. So
yeah.
all good.
But I just will never forget that moment of just like seeing the piece and being sort of overcome by it. So
How did the rest of the writing go?
for the rest of that piece?
Yes.
Yeah, I just went back to my room and just started writing all of the things that happened to us that day. And then trying to remember all the details. And then of course you have to go back through, and then it's not just details, but the details like why they were important to you, why you remember those details. And then actually it was Laura Kalpakian, who served as my editor for this piece, who came back and said, that the descriptions of what happened are great. The ending is great, but I'm missing a bridge. I'm missing when the narrator had her own personal transformation. And instead of having to really put a lot of thought into it, I went, you're exactly right. And frankly, what's in the piece now is word for word the first way I ever wrote that paragraph, because I knew exactly what she meant. I just hadn't included it in the piece. So, I mean, anyone who's written anything knows there are things that you have to work like a mule and slog your way through. And there are things that you just reach up from heaven and
And
grab.
there they are.
And there they are. Yeah.
And I think Laura is one of those heavenly muses. In fact, I said to her the other day, you have a reputation as a wise but ruthless editor. And she laughed and said, I think that's what an editor needs to be.
Yes.
And she is. She's kind, but she.
Yes. And a note to that, when she sent edits to me, I did a revision, I sent it back. And when you first look at your email and you just see like a little piece of how an email starts, she said, this is much better. But because she can be like very, very straightforward, what my brain read was, this isn't much better. And I thought, oh no, I'm doomed. But then of course, that's not what she had said. And we laughed about it.
Well, I think she probably saw the delight, the details, the heartfeltness of your story, and I'm so happy it was in here because it's one of the very good pieces that
Thank you.
I really enjoyed. In fact, I did a lot of underlining in it, and I was noticing, your fine use of language, specifically your verbs like chew on and I don't have them all underlined, but also your adjectives, eclectic, for example, and phrases like whether or not bones lay within. Anyway, it was a great piece to read. So what else would you like to say before we let you launch into reading your piece? Anything you want to say about your...
Boy, anything at all. So I've just recently made a fairly major career change. I worked at a university for the last 10 years. And now I'm working with the Narrative Project with Cami Ostman, everything you need to get your book done. And I'm also taking on some private coaching clients and launch clients because I used to do huge events and different kinds of publicity for the university. So now I'm trying to use some of those skills for authors launching their own books. So if you're someone who needs a little help in that area, you can look me up on my website, amandastubbert.com.
I did look up your website, and I did look you up at SPU, and I did look you up at Facebook, and you have lots of qualifications.
Thank you. I am going to miss, about 4 years ago, started an interview podcast for the university and have loved every minute of it. I love people. I love stories. So that's fun. And you will be the first person to know this. I'm starting a podcast with Cami Ostman about transformational stories. So whoever listens to this, just keep your eye out. It is coming. I will just say soon. I don't have a date yet, but it is coming.
Well,
so very excited about that.
I just announced her new set of podcasts last night or Monday. So now we can look forward to yours of fantastic caliber.
Thank you.
Good luck with that. I'm glad you're doing it.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm so excited. And I think that's the best podcasts to me are the ones where it seems like everybody's having so much fun that they would do it even if no one was listening. And I know how Cami and I talk, and I know how much we both love to talk to people about their transformational stories. So I'm pretty sure that's exactly how it's going to be.
And how you all will always probably laugh together, because that's what one does with Cami, as well as very serious talk. And I haven't listened to any of your SPU stories, but I might take a gander. However, I think I'll just wait till this new podcast comes out. So
you have all the choices, lots of choices.
So many choices. So how about now you read your Spring and All story?
Okay. All right. So this is my 3-minute excerpt that I read at the launch not that long ago. That morning, our group of traveling writers had bounced our way out of Oaxaca proper to visit a local textile business still using traditional methods. We follow Alberto, our Oaxacan guide, in his signature crisp white shirt, like goslings, into the courtyard. I almost skipped this particular chance at adventure. Yesterday was a lot. We trooped around the pre-Columbian city Montalban in the blaring sun. Our German tour guide chastised us with spicy commands every time we stepped away, though Brunhilde did relay a tidbit I continued to chew on. The city's inhabitants housed their dead in a crypt built into the corner of each family home, presumably serving as a daily reminder of who came before and upon whose shoulders you stood. Alberto ushers us towards an alcove for a demonstration. We choose from an eclectic set of chairs as my eyes travel to the corner of the stone and brick structure, guessing at whether or not bones lie within. At our feet lies a color wheel of woolen yarn. Behind each bundle of thread sits a key ingredient for producing each hue. Daniel, our host, takes his seat at the center of this educational semicircle and begins. Alberto catches us up in English. He speaks of what dyes the yarn green, yellow, orange, and brown, all interesting, but not yet magic. I check the wall once more for any sign of ancestors. Daniel's small son, Alexis, appears in a brown hoodie and exorbitantly long eyelashes, with hot chocolate, handmade by the matriarch of the family. Next is the color red. Daniel holds a ping pong paddle cactus leaf covered in white specks, parasites. He plucks one mite from the green pad. Then, with the flourish of a Vegas illusionist, he brushes his left thumb across his right palm, and the white speck becomes a handful of brilliant red. We ooh and ah. We are converts, we say. We now see the magic. Something begins to shift. Do my fellow travelers feel the same change in the air? We beam to our hosts, hoping to convey our gratitude beyond the word gracias. This family opened their arms and let us in, sharing a perspective of connection with history and land we Westerners only read about. We've seen through new eyes, and we will never be the same. After lunch, we shuffle toward our van, full in mind, body, and spirit, not quite ready to leave. Alexis tugs on his father's hand and asks a question which is related to Alberto and back. He smiles. I explain to him that you are all writers. He wants to know if one of you will write about him and his family so they might become famous. As tears wet my eyes, I bend to meet Alexis face to face. Yes, I promise. I will write about you and about our day with your family. As I climb into the van, I continue to mentally answer his question. Oh, Alexis, how could I keep from retelling our meeting? The picture of your family's deep roots in this land and each other burns within me like the embers of your clay oven. You have put the very earth beneath my feet and sunshine in my hands. Will I write about you? Not only that, I will keep the bones of your memory in the corner of my mind, always remembering your contribution to your culture and to my journey. Will I write about you? Yes, in these pages and within the walls of my heart.
Amanda, that's a beautiful nugget.
Thank you.
I encourage people to buy this book and to read the whole story, because that story is a wonderful one, and there are others too that I think people would enjoy. I think people are going to want to listen to your podcast, follow your writing, read your memoir, and I wish all good for you. And I am very pleased that we got to have this conversation this morning. So thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.